3, 2, 1. Welcome back.
I had to shoot my bow before I came over.
Had to shoot the bow.
I did. I shot the bow twice.
And then
My
took
man.
your
2
pants
times.
off?
My
I
man.
put them on after I shot the bow.
So you shot your bow pantless.
Oh.
You just said you put your pants on afterwards.
I know.
That's all right. So, welcome back to Proof Whitetails down here at the bar. Keith and me have been shooting a couple episodes. Nate just stopped in.
Brought to you by Body Armor.
Tonight's episode brought to you by Body Armor. Orange Mango, superior hydration for the better body physique.
It's good stuff.
Body Armor. So, we're good on Facebook and we are good on YouTube. So, yeah, I think that pretty much ties into the beginning of this episode here on October 11th, 2023. We've had our first couple sits of the year for bow season so far. This is the second episode of the New York Southern Zone bow season. A couple things to talk about tonight, a couple controversial topics, which we can get into further in depth. But I kind of want to go down the panel, starting with Keith, talk about your first sit, takeaways, what you think positive, what you think negative so far this season, and like always, we encourage our viewers to comment in. And Keith, take it away.
I'll start with the positives. It wasn't that cold.
That's a good start.
It wasn't
Good
that
start.
cold. My first sit was a little windy, but I got down on a little bit of a creek bed where I'm about 18 to 20 feet below like average grade in the area, so it's kind of down in a little bit of a low area where the wind wasn't so bad, which was kind of nice. I had really good luck with that last year. I didn't see anything, which I was kind of surprised by. For that specific area, like I told Ben before, there were some changes to the area that that happened just with the landowner that happened there. So, but I was kind of lucky and fortunate that I can get down to an area that is protected by the wind. It's kind of like a safe haven for the wind for me. So it was my first sit. I sat there from like 3 to dark, really. A lot of good sign. I got a lot of buck rubs in the area. I got a lot of tracks. It's only about 120 yards from houses, but about the most signs in that area that I see in that area just outside of Rushville. So it was a good sit, honestly. It wasn't, the wind died down and I was expecting to see something. I didn't. Which was surprising because last year, almost every sit in that stand, I saw something.
But you were also saying that there's a lot more owner, because it's a permission piece.
Yep.
A lot more owner activity. Yep.
Yeah.
On that property.
Yeah, there is. Which, I'm never going to tell an owner what to do with their own property. I'm a firm believer you own the parcel, you do with it what you want.
100%.
I feel very fortunate that this parcel I have is only, I was telling Nate, like a minute drive from my house. It's literally a quarter mile down the road, so I can't really argue with that. So I feel fortunate in that sense that it's really close. I'll just kind of take my licks as I get them, and I got a lot to learn. I try to sit in the stand every sit and learn something. Whether it's positive, whether it's negative, I try to learn something. Whether it's going to help me or hurt me, I try to take something out of it in a positive manner, so I don't go and sit in that stand and not have a good time. So that was a big part. It was unsuccessful as far as seeing deer, but I did learn something in that area that night. So
knocking the rust off a little bit, get back into the feel of it.
It really is, and it's kind of getting back in the gist of things of like you've talked about, good woodsmanship. Controlling your scent, being mindful of where you're coming in, where you're going out. I text Ben that same day and said, hey, what time do you usually get in this tree stand? Because as a new-ish hunter, I wasn't really sure. Should I get in at 2? Should I get in at 3? Should I get in at 4? Do I want to sit in the stand for 6 hours? So I got into the stand about 2:45 that day. And honestly, I think it was a good idea because I got up in the stand, and something I always do is I always check my bow hanger for the first time. So it was the first time I've been in that stand. So I grabbed the bow hanger, I literally grab on my left hand and I pull down on it. My bow is heavy. You guys have felt my bow. It's heavy.
Yep.
I grab the bow hanger, pulls right out of the tree. So
not desirable.
So I was really glad that I tried that. So I took it out and I had, I got in the stand early enough where I had time to fix that before I hung my bow up. So there is, I think, value of getting in early.
Yeah.
For that. So for the first time, if you do have issues, you can take care of them before it's prime time, ready to rock and roll. So I was glad that I got in earlier than I used to.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah.
But just for me, part of the learning experience, really.
Always learning.
Yeah.
Always learning.
What about you, Nader? First couple sets.
Went out last Friday afternoon. Pretty quiet evening until the last half hour, which for this time of year is pretty normal. Had two nice doe come out. Looked like three fawns, 3 yearlings. They kind of fed through. Probably the closest they probably got to me was 75 yards through the field. And then I was sitting there probably, I don't know, I was thinking about getting out in like 5-10 minutes. And heard a little walking, and I could see a deer moving through the woods and this thicker buckthorn stuff off in front of me. And I saw a rack. And if he would have came out where he walked out into the field, if he would have turned left, he would have walked right by me. But instead, he ended up turning right, and what he was doing was he was walking the field edges,
the hedgerow,
checking some scrapes and stuff. And because of this huge tree in that spot and how thick it is in that corner, I couldn't see him out in the field. But then a little while went by, and I saw him up at the top corner of the field, which is about 90 yards away. And I got my rangefinder out, which has a little magnification to it. I was looking at him, and I could tell it was a little 6-point buck, little basket rack 6-point. And I was always told, if Keith brought this up earlier, it's a good tip. If you're in a situation, especially early, like this time of year, and you have a smaller buck come out into the field, something you're not going to shoot, or you're not worried about really spooking him, get your grunt call out and test a few things. Like, just experiment with that deer. Make a call if you're unsure about a sequence, or you can definitely go on YouTube and kind of get a rough idea of different sequences you can use, and then try to portray that to the deer and try and portray yourself to that deer, as another deer. So that's what I did. He was out there 90 yards, walking the edge of the cornfield at the top of the hayfield. I got my grunt call out and grunted at him. Was watching him, and he did. He stopped, picked his head up, looked right at me, came right on a string, straight down, kind of at a fast walk right to me. And he did end up, he came within 20 yards and everything. It was cool to kind of mess around with the little guy and brush up on my grunt calling a little bit.
Yep. And you're running that hooks call still?
Hooks? No, Mad.
Oh, you're running that Mad. You run the Mad. That's right.
What's the one you got me?
Hooks, probably. That wood one?
Yeah, the wood one. Yeah.
Yep.
No, I like the Mad calls. The one, those hooks one is nice. But I don't know. I've always had luck with the Mad calls.
Good old jury.
Yeah. I'm a big jury fan.
You can't knock the juries, man.
Watching them since I was a wee one.
Oh, literally, dude. I got some of the old school DVDs.
I got probably 20 DVDs of theirs.
Yeah.
But a cool experience of being able to manipulate the call to bring him closer.
Try and simulate a deer and get him to come in, and and that's a good tip for you. You were talking about, I don't really know how to call. We'll look up a few things online on YouTube. There's guys that'll explain a few things to you.
Yeah.
If you have a specific call, I would probably try and Like if you run in the hooks call, maybe look up guys using hooks calls online and see how that works. And then if you do get that opportunity where it's just that lone little buck out there, I mean, what's it going to hurt?
Well, that Big 10 point I told you guys about last year, he got me that call. I was sitting in that tree that morning, I'll never forget it, and I said to you guys that I had this really nice 10 point in front of me, and one of you two said, did you grunt call him? And I said, no. And that's what started the conversation. And then he got me that grunt call. That same deer came back. And I grunted him, and he came back. But then he was smart, and he circled around.
Got the wind, yeah.
He winded me. I grunted him again, and he came back, winded me again, and then he was gone. But it was a cool experience. It was a learning experience for sure. But it did show me the power of that call.
Yeah,
that it's going to work.
Sounds like he was a mature animal. That's what they'll do. If you grunt, it's kind of amazing how you're in a tree and you grunt at that deer. He will walk to the base of your tree. He will pinpoint that tree
or
from
downwind of that
yards.
tree. Yeah.
Or if it's a mature animal, he'll get to a certain point, and if he cannot see movement or pick up another deer, they will get skeptical or suspicious, and that's when they will start circling and try and winding that deer.
And that's exactly what
happened.
And
then if they did wind them, they would probably move in on them. But instead of winding the deer, he winded you.
Yeah.
That's what happens.
And it was funny because he was behind me to the east of me, and I could peer on the tree and see him. And that's exactly what happened. He heard me. He lifted his head. He recognized something was there, got curious, and then started to circle around and then picked up my wind. But overall, I mean, that was my first experience using a grunt call. That was my first experience.
Sounds like you got his attention.
It did for sure. It was a learning experience that I can move on to this year to use in different situations for sure.
It doesn't always work. Sometimes they don't even care. They just keep going.
No, keep it rolling true. Especially
here's a really stupid question though. So I hunt with my bino harness on, with my binos and my rangefinder on my right, just like we shoot 3D. Where do you guys keep your grunt call?
In my backpack, hung in the tree next to me.
It's usually on my lanyard, like kind of draped on the side. I don't run with a bino harness.
I don't run a bino harness.
Mine typically clips right to my
binos.
Yeah. So mine typically sits on my
your safety harness?
My safety harness.
Okay.
There's a
loop there.
Spring loop or whatever for my grunt call.
Because that's what I struggle with the most is where to put all this stuff. To where I can access it quietly
Simplicity
and without
bliss.
Moving a lot.
You'll understand you'll understand more of what you need out in the field than all the. I mean, you could bring the whole Dick's Sporting Goods section with you out in the woods. It ain't gonna help you none.
And some folks it works for them.
Yeah.
But other ones you kind of you figure feel out what works, what doesn't work for you. Like my muddy harness was really nice. It had 2 little clips for my binoculars, whereas now I run an old grunt call lanyard. And it just sits around on one side. My binoculars kind of hang off to the side. And then on my harness sits my grunt call, sits my wind indicator on the other side, and that's it. The binoculars sit tight. I usually tuck them down in the belly strap. And I got full range of motion. Binoculars come out when I got to see 100 yards or more.
Yeah.
Grunt calls right here. Wind indicators right here where I can pull milkweed and throw milkweed and check my thermal and all my wind, and it works pretty good like that.
So that's one thing I struggle with is like I wanna minimize movement. Obviously, especially if when deer are in close, but overall I try not to move a lot. That's one thing I'm like, okay, where am I gonna put it?
20 yards, I wouldn't be checking your wind.
Oh, no, obviously, yeah. Obviously.
I'm just messing with
you.
Yeah. But obviously, I was always taught growing up to use my eyes more than my body. To look around it and to minimize movement and things like that. So it's one thing I never asked Ben is where do you keep this? How do you store this? How do you access that when you're using it, that grunt call?
It's however, I guess works best for you.
Yeah.
You'll develop a system or whatever for
I don't
what
like
you
anything
use.
on me.
Yeah.
Like I mean, I might if I'm running a jacket and it's the colder temperatures, I might shove my rangefinder in my jacket pocket.
Okay.
I run a thumb release.
Yep.
So my release is always clipped to my bow. I don't have to worry about that
So
on
you
me.
leave that right on the string.
When I get in the stand and I hang my bow up, well, I always take my quiver off, put that on the hanger, and then I hang my bow up, and then I take my release and I just clip it on the loop.
Yep.
So when I grab my bow, I just grab my release with the bow. I don't have to worry about it
Flopping
dropping it
around,
because I'm trying to put it on. I don't know how many times, or I don't know,
Trying to
I've
get
run
it
into
clipped on the loop.
scenarios. I've run into scenarios, walking in, or you were talking about this, I think, maybe last week, or maybe you're just telling me the story of you walking in and that your target buck ended up crossing your path at like 30 yards.
Yep.
And so you run into these scenarios. So when you're walking in, you want that release clipped up.
Yeah.
Well, then you get to the stand, you either got to take it off, put it in your pocket, or if
Screw
you're lazy
around.
like me, you try and not make noise climbing up into your stand with it on your.
Yeah.
That's why I love the thumb release. I just shove it in my pocket. I get up in the stand. I get out, just clip it on the loop, and it just stays
You're
there.
good to go. Yeah.
Yep.
And then with all my grunt calls, wind indicators, my rattling horns, my rangefinder, all that stuff that I use. I forget the name of the backpack that I run, but the front of it actually folds out. It's got like a stiff, like plastic front.
Almost like a shelf.
It folds out into a shelf, and I just pull everything out and I just set everything on that shelf.
So you have a shelf on your backpack.
Yeah,
that is awesome.
I just when I want something, I just kind of turn a little bit and grab it, and it's usually always hanging right on my right side.
And that's what I usually do with my backpack, but it doesn't have a shelf. So, like, if I need something, if I want a granola bar or water,
Alps. Yeah, Alps. It's an Alps backpack.
So like I'm unzipping, which is loud, things like that. So it's constantly. I think about back what Ben said last year is good woodsmanship. And I always try to practice that going in and out, and also being in the stand too. So to just minimize that footprint you're leaving in and out and in the tree, really. Yeah. So that's good. So thank you, because obviously I have a bit to learn as far as that goes.
Everybody's got always something to learn, something to pick up.
Yeah.
Always.
I'm learning every year.
Yeah. A couple comments rolling in. Derek Tuttle tuning in from Idaho.
What's up, Derek?
Hey,
says,
Derek.
Good evening, gentlemen. Hope you guys are having a good night. I'm out stalking tiger muskie right now. Would rather be chasing some deer/elk. And now that rifle is open.
Ooh, rifle's open out there. Nice.
Yeah, well, when I was out there, it was bow season.
Right. Yeah.
Yep. So.
Yep.
Yeah.
Stalking tiger muskie's still cool.
That is cool.
Yeah. So I got a full tour. We didn't dive into this too much last episode or whatnot, but I got kind of a tour of the supplemental facility that they moved all the salmon over to when I was out there with Derek. Because it was the first time in like 10 or 12 years that his hatchery had no pumps or water running. They had moved all the fish just because of the right timing and stuff. So it was really cool to see how Idaho Fish and Game kind of manages their fish and stuff like that. And Derek could obviously speak to this more, and we talked about it a little bit when I was out there with the podcast with him. But they do hundreds of thousands of, kokanee specifically at his hatchery. I think it's even upwards in the millions for all that stuff. So it's crazy. It's a completely different ball game out there.
That's cool.
But yeah, tiger muskie. I wonder if he's stocking that more in central Idaho.
So that's going right in the lakes, tiger muskie?
He'd have to speak to that.
So what were you catching when you were out there?
I was catching northern pike minnows. Derek caught a couple walleye, smallmouth, perch.
Nice. So not that dissimilar from here.
Not much, but there's not the diversity. Like when we were fishing the outlet when he was here for my 30th birthday, he couldn't believe the amount of diversity that was in the Canandaigua outlet, just right down the road here.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, you don't see 10, 15 different fish species out where I am. You see like 3 or 4 or whatever. So
that's cool.
Yeah. Steve Bogart comments in, frequent listener, said, heard something interesting today. Carry acorns in your pocket and drop them from your tree stand, and the deer hear them, and it sounds like a buffet. I don't know how true this is. 100%, dude.
Why not?
I've thrown rocks from the stand before, not like thrown, but dropped them through the leaves and stuff like that. They key in on stuff like that, especially this time of the year, mass dropping.
I mean, if you're hunting in an area with acorns, I mean, if you're hunting like
Hmm.
if you're hunting
A field
a
edge.
maple woods, I mean, I
Yeah.
wouldn't be chucking acorns around.
No.
Maybe.
No.
It has to
So
be-
it's got to be
It has to be consistent with the
the
trees that
habitat.
you want around you.
Yeah.
Right.
So I don't think that's a bad tip necessarily, but again, having the situation or place to use that technique of dropping acorns or rocks. I mean, you can drop rocks.
Time of year.
Time of year too. Um, but yeah,
Time of year the acorns are dropping.
yeah.
Right.
I don't think that's a bad technique necessarily. For sure. So
I've never heard of that. That's pretty interesting.
I've heard of that before. I've done it somewhat. With minimal success. I never necessarily killed a target deer or something over it, but and whether I've
It's
called
leaving a breadcrumb trail of acorns.
Yeah,
They just
well, I don't have any acorns, so that's the other thing too. With my properties, I don't have many oaks, whether it be red or whites. So most of our woods would be hickory or beech. So we don't have a whole lot of acorn crop in our woods as a whole. Um, so I've tried it, I've done it. Whether the success of that was because I was dropping, nuts or rocks out of the tree versus just sitting on a good, movement that I'd scouted. That's tough to say. So, Derek says millions, lol. He said up north in the town of Sagal in Shepherd Lake, just outside Sandpoint, I've had to do surgery to put radio tags in about 100 of them.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
Thanks, Derek.
So he had to drive 6 hours to pick them up though. From a different hatchery.
It's not driving.
No, thank you.
That's nothing out there, dude.
Yeah.
It gets
Big country.
long way to whatever you're going to. I mean, to get to Costco, we were probably hour and a half, 2 hours to get to
Wow.
like a decent. I mean, you could get stuff at like the local gas station, but it was you gotta check the date, make sure it's not outdated.
Bread and water.
And whiskey. I mean, there's whiskey there.
We know
Because
this.
it's a state controlled state, so you can get whiskey at the gas station. But yeah, I mean, Derek was talking about that, like going 2 hours into Washington to pick me up from the airport was almost like nothing.
It was normal.
It's a decent, it's okay. It's 2 hours. I'll drive to Washington, pick you up.
That's
Whereas it would probably be about 6 hours to go to an Idaho airport to pick me up versus Washington.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. So just up there in that lovely Panhandle region.
Yeah.
So, but yeah,
That's
stocking millions. Yeah, Derek says also 6 hours one way.
One way.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
a full day.
It's like driving to Virginia and back for us.
Yeah, literally. Go right
12
down.
hours of driving. I could be
Yeah.
in North Carolina.
Yeah,
Holy
easy.
crumb, man.
Easy. So yeah, so
So let's hear about your first set.
first couple sits, sat 2 different properties, evening sits, both of them. Passed a buck, both sits, a year and a half old at my grandmother's, and then a year and a half old at our farm, my parents' property. I thought about shooting a doe Friday afternoon, and then that pesky thing called wind, we let her go. Decent doe, let her go. She got past me into my wind, and then started getting a little spooky. You could tell with the body language, and then she starts blowing a little bit, and I'm just like, you got to do that? Come on, come on now.
I love all the memes about that. That cracks.
Come on now. So
It was a Randy Moss with his come on,
man.
His segment on ESPN or whatever he's on.
Yeah. So I obviously didn't get a shot at her. Got out of there that night, slunk out of there. There was still deer in the field when I left that night, actually. Climbed down, even binoculary the field as I walked out, and they were still out there feeding, which was really cool. And then I Sat the following afternoon over at our property, saw a pile of deer. Possible shooter, wasn't sure if it was Curly, who's pretty much the main buck I'm after this year, or if it was another one of the really good up and coming, I guess, 8 points. It could have been Dono, could have been. I mean, I was looking at him from about 300 yards out, so um, it was tough to say. And then there was another 6 or 8 different deer further up that distance that I couldn't tell necessarily whether it's bucks, does, or whatever. Able to get off that night. It was a good sit. Passed a 3-point buck that night, and a doe, a really big doe that had one fawn. Elected to let her go that night too. And then a couple other nice does came through within range ish, and just kind of let them slide through. So, good sit. But evenings kind of more food centered right now. Versus maybe morning sets, but I think maybe this weekend I might set a morning set. Got a little mini front kind of blowing in again, not like a red flashing light set alert like we've been talking, just a nice little front blowing in. Something to get the temp drop, wind change a little bit, stuff like
Thursday
that.
about midday
Mhm.
should change south wind north, which
Yeah.
north wind just lines up better for my properties to hunt.
So
South wind's tough.
how do you guys feel with the projected rain? What is your opinion in sitting in the stand with rain? How is that going to affect movement? How is that going to affect
I would just hunt the front and back of it.
yeah.
Depends on the rain. I mean, if it's like pouring, I'm not gonna be out there if it's pouring.
Yeah.
If it's like a misty rain, I mean, and it's that time of year, the rut's kind of going on.
Yeah, if
would
we're
get out
talking
there.
another 2-3 weeks from now for sure. Definitely wouldn't let the mist stop me. And if you can time that rain where it's pouring, raining cats and dogs, I've sat in the truck, and then literally as soon as it starts letting up a little bit, you grab your bow and you start making a run for your freaking stand. And I've been in the stand right when it's breaking, and it's been money.
So it's interesting you say that, because the only deer I've shot with my bow, the buck I shot 2 years ago, was that exact situation. It rained like cats and dogs. It stopped. I got in the tree, and then 2 hours later, there he was.
Yeah.
So is it true that you're gonna put down less scent in those rain events, going to and from the stand, than not?
I would say more.
Moisture's gonna hold more.
Yeah, moisture's
Okay.
going to hold more scent. That's why you see a dog or a deer licking their nose to pick up on that extra little bit of scent molecule. If you're talking like downpour, 3/4 inch, inch and a half of rain, yeah, that's going to wash away some scent.
Yeah.
But if we're talking especially like misty stuff or 1/10 of an inch less, you're going to be saturating that area with the amount of scent you put down, I guess, per inch or whatever you want to call it, as a whole. So, moderate rain, you're going to leave more scent. Pouring rain, you're going to leave less scent. We'll call it with quotes. But it all depends on the rain, the intensity of the rain, and all that stuff.
Okay.
But yeah, so it depends, dude. It's such a, you can't just be like, yeah, it's raining, I'm gonna go pull cards. It's got to be like pouring down deluge, like washing out your creek beds kind of rain to wash your sun away.
Right.
A little drizzle rain. If you're getting even like a 1/4 inch or a 1/2 inch throughout an entire day, that's nothing.
Okay.
That's not washing your stuff away.
Right.
So, a couple comments rolling in. Derek says, all right, got to get back to work before I'm cutting fish open in the dark with a headlamp. Have a good night, y'all. Yeah, Derek, thanks for tuning in from Idaho. Cheers. Good old 5 o'clock out there. on the west coast of stuff.
Yeah.
3 hours behind us. Dave Todd. Dave, shout out to Dave. He hooked me up with that Tin Woodsman's.
Oh, that's
starter.
Dave?
Yep.
Thanks, Dave.
Yep. So thank you, Dave, for the Tin Woodsman's. It says I have some nice buck activity on the cameras within 20 yards of a tree stand in a cedar swamp. The majority of the activity is around 5 a.m. I haven't hunted that stand yet for the fear of spooking them on the way in. Should I wait until the end of October, 1st of November? It's a good question. Five is close, but we're still 2 hours ish out from sunup.
Yeah. I would still focus more on the evening sits.
Mhm.
Going into the morning, you're kind of risking that chance of spooking them more right now.
Mhm. I guess my little bit into that would be with temperature wise, when are you seeing them moving past that location at what like specific temperature? Are you talking, mid 50s, whereas, maybe the next few mornings might be in the mid 40s. So you might be able to capitalize on that temperature difference. If that's what you're seeing, you know.
Yeah, I mean, just like we were saying, I mean, you just kind of hunt the weather, hunt the fronts on this early season. I mean, what's gonna get them deer? I mean, even with like a full moon, I mean, you get to that. I mean, deer are gonna stay out later with the full moon,
On the food, yep.
on the food. So you're gonna have a better chance of that deer walking through later in the morning with that.
Yeah, that's a great point.
When and Dave, you're talking about waiting till first or last week of October, first week of November is really when I would start pushing, is when I would really start hunting more mornings and putting in longer sits, is probably here starting the end of next weekend. In the next couple weeks, definitely start putting in more morning sits.
Mhm.
I think you can really, by hunting the first 2 to 3 weeks of October in the afternoon, you're gonna spook less deer by getting in there because they're not coming out to feed until that last hour of light. But then again, if you can play the weather, like we were just talking about a little bit ago, you get that front that ends at 1 o'clock in the afternoon,
Yeah.
might get them on their feet and coming out, or you got a front that ends at 8 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
Maybe go out. Maybe that front has those deer bedded down majority of the night, and they're going to get up and feed, around that 7, 8 o'clock range once that front starts dying off, or in the beginning of a front, depending on the time. Try and get out there and play that
Mhm.
a little bit. That's kind of what I would do
So I'm
in
looking
the
at that.
early weeks.
I'm looking at that moon kind of phase thing or whatever, and you're looking at the quarter moon, which is really a half phased moon or whatever you want to call it.
Waxing or waning?
Be waxing on both ends of that.
I believe waxing is when the moon's slowly getting larger.
Yep,
And then
exactly.
waning
Waning is the
when
past off of the full.
It's getting
off of the
smaller.
full, the moon
Yep.
starts getting
You got it.
smaller.
So that first quarter is
Should be
usually about that halfway point on the moon illumination, and that's going to be October 22nd.
And that also depends on sky clarity. If you got
Yeah.
overcast, it's not
It
gonna
doesn't
help you
matter.
much.
So right now we are actually on a waning moon, if anybody was wondering. Waning moon at about 5% illumination. The next 5 nights you're less than 5% illumination at night. And that's without cloud cover. Cloud cover, you can even make it darker than that. So you're not going to even get 50% illumination until 22nd.
I was gonna say like the 20th.
Yeah, 22nd.
It's a ways out yet.
Yeah, exactly. You're
And
another 10 days out.
And that's lining up with when the rut's really going to start ramping
That-
up, at least on the average time frame.
Yeah,
Right.
It always varies.
yeah, exactly.
So
And that will push them further into that, quote, night feeding, I guess we'll call it, back to bed later in that morning time frame. So like Nate's saying, unless you get another front or something in there pushing them to move more during daylight hours, Dave, I would say leaning more towards when you got more nighttime illumination, stretching out that nighttime feeding
Mm-hmm.
to get back to that bedroom set where you're getting them kind of early in the morning.
Mm-hmm. And a lot of people get confused by that moon phase, and there's people explain it so many different ways, but that's probably the simplest way to actually try and hunt the moon, I guess, is the simplest way to explain it.
In our opinion, I mean, there's a lot of folks that have a moon dial and hunt the red moon and hunt other things with the moon. I've never seen a large correlation with that. The science and the data has not put a lot of correlation with that.
Mm-hmm.
The only thing it's put correlation with is the amount of visual illumination with the light, meaning the amount of moon that's exposing light to the surface of the earth
Mm-hmm.
where that's stretched out feeding times and stuff like that. So that's the only thing I put stock in. Is the
So-
stuff that's been, proven with quantifiable data.
So how's that going to affect how you decide to go into the stand morning versus afternoon?
So mornings, it's going to push that nighttime feeding. It's going to almost prolong that
Mm-hmm.
or shift it more toward sunrise time or whatever you want to call it.
Mm-hmm.
So that might allow you to get in there where in Dave's situation is getting in there where the deer are coming in at 5, whereas you got 50% more illumination in the morning hours of
Might push them to
the
6,
day.
7.
Might push them into that 7 time frame, which we get the fall back. Boom, you fall back right into
It's right in there.
that daybreak.
Yeah.
Getting back closer to that bedtime.
So it's just shifting that timetable of when you're going to see them in front of you.
And the illumination.
Yeah.
Yeah, based on the amount of photo period or sunlight, moonlight, whatever that they have available to them, that's going to shift, and that's what's shifting their patterns. They're not sitting there with a clock and going, it's 6 o'clock, I gotta go back to bed.
Right.
No, it's they look up and they're feeding or whatever. There's a million different factors
It's their
that factor,
environment.
that factor into their daily movements in their environment. But if you have typical conditions, they go, it's getting a little, getting a little dark because at that point the moon's starting to set.
Yeah.
Their light exposure's going down. They might start shifting back to that bed later, closer to daybreak, than they were 10 days ago or before that. For example, for Dave's situation. Again, that's a specific buck, a specific pattern.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas in a morning, I would be sitting if I'm getting down in those lower 40s, high 30s. Those are the mornings I'm looking for,
Cool
and in those October 20th ish, kind of sits for getting out there, which they're coming. I mean,
Oh yeah, not
you,
far.
you you look at the 10-day, it's coming.
I mean, our nights are down in the 40s already, so.
Yep.
Yeah. Dave says, I've also had a lot of daylight buck activity on cameras this past Monday morning. Did you guys see this? What's special about Monday morning?
I would say you're
on the tail end of the front.
Tail end of the front over the weekend, and it's. I mean, we've had a temperature drop.
Yeah.
We've had that change from a week ago. It was 80 degrees.
Yeah.
At 5 p.m. So, I mean, you're going from an 80-degree temperature last week into this week where your average day temperature is 50. I mean, you just had almost a 20 to 30-degree temperature drop, and that's the cooler temperatures are going to get the deer up and moving as it is.
That's huge. So, yeah, I think that's a big thing for them this past Monday. Plus, the rain pushed out, the weather pushed out, the front kind of hit on the tail end.
That's kind of going back to what we were talking about with
Hunting
Dave,
the fronts.
hunting those fronts. Like if you had a thunderstorm or a rainstorm that rolled, let's say, rolled all night, and it's supposed to start tapering off around 4 in the morning. Well, them deer aren't going to go out there and feed in the middle of a thunderstorm.
Right.
They're
Yeah.
going to be hunkered down. They're going to stay bedded.
Mm-hmm.
And their feeding pattern is going to change a little bit. They're going to go out and feed. You know, 'cause they got to eat.
Yeah.
They're going to go out and feed after that storm blows through. So you might be able to get one of those bucks up moving, going to feed later if that front tapers off, real early in the morning, like that 4 or 5 o'clock range. They're going to
Yeah.
get up and move out to feed and then go back.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Steve says, "What was the whiskey tonight?" Me and Keith had some of this Schafel.
Yeah, we did. It
Um,
was a good one.
Yep, that was our pour for the night. So that was kind of our pour.
Mm-hmm.
Other than that, we're just kind of coasting, having good conversation, all that kind of stuff. So we haven't poured one or whatever for the live show right off. So that was our, I guess, warm up pour or whatever you want to call
Warm up pour.
it. Yep.
What distillery is that out of?
That's out of Wild Turkey.
Wild Turkey.
It's a good
Yep.
one.
Would you say it was Schaefer's?
Schafel.
Schafel?
That's the same one that does Bond and Lillard.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Nate's had the Bond and
Bond and
Lillard.
Lillard is a good one. That's a good sipper.
Mm-hmm. So Dave Todd said, "I would agree. I've always had good luck on the mornings after a cold front. Glad you guys confirmed it." Yeah, it's a front side or back side. Usually middle front is not. It can produce. I mean, obviously people kill deer every day of the season,
Mm-hmm.
but the front side of
A lot
those
of bucks
fronts, the
showing
back
up on
side of the
social
fronts.
media.
Yeah, a lot of bucks.
There are.
There
really
a
are.
lot of bucks.
A lot on Monday.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there
What I
was.
see a lot on Monday, a lot of big bucks on Monday.
There was a lot from this, and again, that was part of it too. This past weekend was youth weekend. So the firearms are out there, and
Add a little more pressure.
the kids were hammering some good bucks, for sure. Saw some questionable bucks that might not have been, wild bucks per se, posted on social media.
You always get the
people that want to just
posts.
stir the pot.
Yeah, you always
Stir
get
the
them
pot a
floating
little
around.
bit.
You always get them floating around.
Yeah, absolutely. Steve says, "Sorry, I missed it. What was it again?" That was the Schafel.
Just a little bottle.
Little 375.
Set her out there.
Little Schafel. This was the Whiskey Barons series, which was distilled at Wild Turkey. We'll talk about this in an upcoming episode of the Fresh Crack Fridays for our 16 bottle battle. But this bottle used to be $38, $40. Now it's like $52, and
For the small bottle.
for the small bottle, and I wouldn't pay that anymore.
No.
It's decent pour, not worth the price tag
No.
of the pour. Go get yourself some Turkey 101 and
Call it good enough.
pretend it's hotter. So, but the Bond and Lillard, I would highly recommend. Hopefully that doesn't go up, but I assume it's gonna. If the
Good
Lillard's
sipper,
going up,
That's a good sipper.
so. But yeah, we'll give you the straight honest thing with it. We got no dogs in this fight. But yeah. But no, other than that, so I want to get everybody's take on this. We're a good 15 minutes in, so this is a good time to bring up this topic that might take the rest of the episode.
Mm-hmm.
So what is everybody's take, viewers included? Feel free to comment in on what your take is on the new ADA crossbow for New York State.
Explain this to me.
Okay, so I'll get into this the best I can understand it. So, to my understanding now, with the new Americans with Disabilities Act, ADA, right now, all you have to do, any one of us, is go to your doctor, get them to sign a form, and says their shoulder, their body, whatever,
Your bicep.
doesn't matter, can't draw a compound bow, so they are eligible to use a crossbow. And then you send that to New York State. They verify that with your doctor's note. They give you a little certificate or whatever that says now you can use a crossbow throughout all of archery season in New York State.
Mm-hmm.
Takes on that, and we'll go Nate first because Keith let it off with the sit of the year.
I mean, I kind of touched on my opinion on the whole crossbow
Yeah,
thing
we did last episode.
I mean,
True.
I mean, in my opinion, if you want to hunt with a crossbow October 1st, I think you should be able to.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really discriminate much against crossbow hunters. I don't use one. I don't own one. But as long as you do your due diligence and you practice with it and you can make ethical shots with it, and I guess it is what it is. I mean,
A short, sweet, and to the point.
yeah. I mean,
all right. So I'll give my 2 cents on it or whatever. I don't think a crossbow, I guess, should be a substitute for. I'll use this term very broadly right now, laziness. Whereas you think you can just go out there, it's still just like anything else. You have to shoot your weapon to be proficient with your weapon. If you think a crossbow, you can just pick it up and shoot it like a gun, you still have to practice with that. Even if it's a gun, you still have to practice with that weapon that you're going to take a field.
do your due diligence.
100%. And that's my thing with it. So when it comes to crossbow and people saying, well, it's easier, it's a stepping stone for folks getting into archery, youth, elderly, whatever argument you want to make on the subject, I think you still need to put the same amount of effort you put in with a vertical bow that you do with a crossbow, with a rifle, with a shotgun, with a pistol. Doesn't matter what weapon you're using, you need to still shoot that weapon to make sure you're effective and proficient with that weapon. It doesn't matter. I think that's a null and void argument for a crossbow, that it's easier to pick up or more familiar for folks to pick up.
Yeah.
That's kind of my take on it. And again, it's still archery equipment. This doesn't mean you're shooting that weapon 40 plus yards, I would say, is effective range for archery equipment. Can they do it? Yes. Can somebody step up there and shoot 60, 70 yards with a compound bow? Yes. Should you shoot live animals with archery equipment at 40 plus, 50 plus yards? In most situations, no.
Unless you're Levi Morgan, no.
Which I am not, and 99% of folks listening are not.
So
that's my take on it.
I grew up shooting skeet, as I've told you guys, and one of the gentlemen I grew up with was paralyzed. He was in a wheelchair, and he shot skeet.
Mm-hmm.
He shot just as normal as everyone else with the same equipment. You know how hard it is to load a crossbow,
mm-hmm.
right? Like, if you gave me a crossbow right now, as a completely able body, I don't know how to load it. And what is to me, what is more difficult, to load a compound bow or to load a crossbow?
That's fair.
Yeah,
it depends on the bow too. Some bows are very specific where you actually need to cock them with the safety off.
Right. So
otherwise, it'll. Was it your bow or my dad's bow? It was my dad's bow. You can't cock my dad's crossbow that he uses with the safety on. You have to cock it with the safety off, otherwise it makes like a doppelganger or whatever you want to call it, and the trigger where you can't pull the trigger. This doesn't make it a live trigger. So you have to kind of release it down and then put the safety off and then pull it all the way back up again. So, and that's for your safety.
Mm-hmm.
My view of the crossbow is different, honestly. So to be frank, to be honest, I've never shot a crossbow. I know a lot of people that do shoot crossbows. I've talked to Mike at Heritage a lot about shooting crossbows. The first thing that comes on my mind is cheating. Why do I say cheating? Because all summer we practice 3D. We practice our craft about executing good shots, making those good shots throughout the summer. So when we are in the stand in the blind, we execute a good shot.
Mm-hmm.
I have a lot of friends that just go in their closet, grab their crossbow, they look through the scope, they pull the trigger, they kill the deer without practicing, without putting that time, that effort at practicing their craft or whatever that tool may be. So for me, and I'm just being completely honest, when somebody says, hey, I harvested this really nice buck with this crossbow. If you say I harvest this buck with a crossbow versus a longbow, I'm going to view that differently. That's just the reality of it for me.
Mm-hmm.
For as far as being disabled, I would bring up the question is if you're maybe you're a person that's in a wheelchair, right? Can you pull a bow back, right? So Ben had an injury this past year where he physically couldn't pull a bow back.
Mm-hmm.
So in that case, a crossbow may have been a good option for him if it was in hunting season, if he could load that bow. But from my perspective, if you have the ability to physically pull that bow back and execute a good shot, and execute a shot that can harvest an animal, you should be using a longbow.
Mm-hmm.
Compound.
A compound bow. That's just my viewpoint of that.
So to argue that point, I mean, I got friends that shoot instinctive, and they bust on me, say I cheat because I use sights.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I have friends just the same.
I mean, if you want to get into it, I mean,
Yeah.
when they brought rifles into the shotgun season.
Yep. It's no different.
It's the same idea.
Exactly.
It's the same idea.
Or if you're high end loading these muzzleloaders now, and some guys are shooting 300 yards
you're not
with muzzleloaders.
Yep.
Cap and ball.
Yep.
Those inline muzzleloaders now. I mean, I'm touching.
It's a rifle.
I'm touching.
It is a rifle.
No problem.
So it's just, I think it's perspective. I think it's your ability, but I do appreciate the use of the crossbow. But speaking to like close friends and family,
it's an efficient weapon.
It is. But personally,
wars were won over it back in the day.
I see how much effort the three of us that we put into using a compound bow, and how many hours it takes to become proficient with that weapon to take a life. Really, that's what we're doing it for, right?
Mm-hmm.
When I talk to people that use a crossbow and they don't have to put in that time to make ethical kill, that just takes away from that a little bit for me, because you don't have to put in the same effort for archery equipment.
That's fair.
Okay, so that's kind of where my reservation is with that, is you can get away with a little bit more.
Or a little bit less, I guess. A little bit less rather than putting in as much effort.
Yeah, so that's kind of where I go with that. I think it's got its time and its place, but I don't think that just a disability is an excuse to use a crossbow.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I really don't.
That's fair.
That's a fair point.
That's fair. And again, we are sitting with one of the longest deer seasons outside of southern United States in New York as well.
Yeah.
There's opportunity to kill deer in New York.
Yeah.
There is no lack of opportunity versus other states. And we could get into, and me and Nate dove into it last year, the whole one buck rule, and that's another different topic for another day. We
ain't got the time for that.
We don't got time for that topic.
I
mean, we're almost an hour in tonight. Steve says, "How are you going to drag that deer out if your shoulder can't handle that?"
Well, no, that's true. That's a good point.
That's a very good point.
So you had your bicep tear.
Mm-hmm.
If that would have happened during bow season, and you could have used a crossbow to harvest an animal, I would be like, absolutely, I understand that. But could you do that by yourself?
If I was at full tear, I don't think I would have been able to, and this is just honestly speaking with how my arm tore, I don't think I would have been able to draw a crossbow.
To cock it.
Yeah, with a full, we say full tear. It was a partial tear of my bicep. On the restrictions they gave me, I don't think I would have comfortably been able to draw the crossbow. There's other options. There's cranks.
Yeah.
You could have somebody cock it for you before you go to the stand. There's other options. Would I have qualified for it with the new ADA Act? Probably. I could have got my doctor to sign off on it.
And that's my point.
It's possible.
Is if 100%. You had that opportunity, you could have used it.
100%.
To harvest that animal.
And again, I'm thankful I'm not there. I'm thankful that I listened to my doctors, built up my strength, did some physical therapy, stuff, worked with my chiropractor and all that stuff to get back to where I wanted to be able to shoot where I was shooting last year and as effectively as I was last year. Now going into season and feeling comfortable with that. But again, I had to take the whole summer archery,
Well, you part of indoor last year.
Yeah, and the end of indoor season off, for my archery practice. So, but again, I've been hitting it hard with that and, trying to be the best I can. Steve says it's only one shot, right? I hear it takes a bit longer to reload a crossbow. It can. I mean, those cranks are very loud. I don't have them with a crank. Mine's a traditional cock.
I've never used one with a crank. I just know they're out
Yeah,
there.
mine's a traditional step on it and cock it up. And again, full transparency, I've killed a deer with a crossbow. I think late season muzzle loader. Before I had my nice inline. Thank you, Nate, for suggesting that little.
Introducing you.
Yeah, that little CVA Optima.
I love muzzleloaders.
Oh, that CVA Optima, that's a monster.
He told me to buy a muzzleloader rather than a rifle.
That's all you need.
It's all you need.
It is a rifle.
So, and again, we'll
shots.
see if I end up picking up one of those muzzleloader pistols. I'm still on the fence about it between now and muzzleloader season.
I've known a few guys that use them. They're pretty.
It's an Optima with a pistol grip.
A short barrel.
That's all it is. It's the same muzzleloader I shoot, just with a shorter barrel and a pistol grip. Same exact thing. But yeah, so the crossbows, they take a bit to reload. And again, making sure you cocked it right, making sure your bolt's seated right. There's a lot of stuff that goes into it for sure, but there's not you have to, plan your draw cycle. And I'm not just talking longbow. I'm talking like traditional archery guys too. They have to plan that draw cycle as they set on that deer to release, whereas compound, you can sit, you can hold weight, you can shoot. That's all part of it. I mean, like Nate said, when people introduced rifle to this zone, people were like, "Oh, that's just cheating. We've all used shotguns forever."
Yeah.
Again, I agree with opportunity for getting more folks out there, but again, we're also dealing with a limited resource where I can only hunt maybe half the ground I used to be able to hunt 20 years ago. The access isn't there. So more opportunity through season doesn't equal more opportunity through land either. I think that's a big piece of it, where people are just like, legislators are more like, we'll just give more people opportunity. Well, opportunity doesn't equal huntability. It just equals maybe more seasons or whatever. But if you still don't have a piece to hunt, it doesn't matter if you can hunt with a vertical bow, with a crossbow, with a gun, with a muzzleloader. It doesn't matter if you don't have a place to go hunt. Or if you go to state land and everything's getting piss pounded and pounded into the ground and there's no deer there, what kind of use is that for a renewable resource either?
What is it? Is it Ohio? Doesn't the state give farmers a grant or some kind of sort of bonus for, I guess, allowing people to hunt their farm?
New York does the party permits and stuff like that too for some ground. Gives them incentivization more down toward the Hudson Valley and stuff for letting folks come onto their property, tax breaks, etc.
Yeah. I did not know that. That's cool.
Yeah, different areas of the state and stuff like that. Areas where
maybe open up some of these private parcels to give them a little incentive to let, I guess,
individuals have the opportunity. Yeah, absolutely. And I was in a deer focus group where they're like, we need to have more people kill antlerless deer, meaning they're trying to reduce the population as a whole throughout the state. And I also say with this, it's your job as a sportsman, as a hunter or huntress, whatever way you want to, sportswoman, whatever way you want to, quantify that you need to look at your property as a renewable resource. Meaning, if you have 5 deer on the property and you think you're going to go out there and punch 4 out of your 5 tags and think you're going to have 4 out of 5 deer to hunt next year, that doesn't happen.
Good luck.
Yeah, exactly. So you need to also look at that critically and say, okay, I'm the only person that hunts this, so that makes it very simple, black and white. I'm going to take 1 or 2 deer, whether it be a buck and a doe, 2 does, whatever, out of that population to keep that population relatively the same. And that is a decent rule of thumb, and we can go into different variables with that. But I think that's a good base point where if you're just like, if there's 1 or 2 of us hunting this property, we can take 1 to 2, maybe 3 deer and still keep a good huntable deer population for this property a year. Managing that resource based on what you're seeing for deer numbers, etc. Whereas you get folks that come in and say, I got 6 tags. I'm going to punch 6 tags. Or not spread that out between multiple properties.
Or you got 5 people hunting that piece.
Yeah, exactly.
And not supporting 20 deer or whatever.
Yeah.
6 people go in there and they all punch 3-4 tags. Well,
it doesn't last long.
You're diminishing that.
It doesn't last long.
You're not helping your situation out for next year.
No.
And then it's not even just for next year either. It could be multiple years.
It can be definitely generational with some of that stuff.
We have a parcel in Gorham that I used to hunt as a high schooler, and it was only hunted by 2 people. It was about 60 acres. In the last 10 years, people bought land around this parcel that hunt, where it previously was just ag land. Well, it got sold. People bought it up that hunted. You get 3 more people that hunt that ground around it. And now they go set in the same tree stands in that area, and there's no deer.
Mm-hmm.
They just, where 15, 20 years ago there was more deer than you could think of.
Oh yeah.
With nice bucks, a good doe population. Now it's gone.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and when I say gone, I mean my uncle goes and sits there and doesn't see a deer for 3, 4, 5 days.
High pressure, it sounds like.
High pressure.
High pressure, diminished numbers.
A lot of people there, a lot of people in the area, like you said, with a lot of tags, just destroying that resource.
Mm-hmm.
And he's seen that in the past 5 years to where he's not even going and sitting there anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's so many people taking animals in that area. And it's not a small area. It's in that surrounding area, it's about 100 acres-ish.
Which is very small on the landscape side.
Right. Stuff. When you get 3-4 people in there with 3 or 4 tags, that's a lot of animals in a small area.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I definitely want to hit Dave's topic, and then I have a little bit to add to that. Dave says, sensitive topic, but all I'm going to say is please practice and take ethical shots. The vertical bow definitely takes more practice than a crossbow. Mic drop. Boom.
Yeah. You couldn't be more true.
I would agree with that for sure. It definitely takes more to be proficient and definitely effective with a vertical bow than a horizontal bow, if you want to call it that. Yeah. My little caveat to Keith's topic, where he's saying a property is almost overhunted now, is east side of the farm. If you get over on, let's just say, our east side of our property, I don't shoot does anymore. The neighbor, again, having those conversations with adjacent landowners, hunters, etc., I know that they shoot 6, 8, 10 does in a summer. I don't need to shoot does over there.
Right.
I can, if it came down to it and I needed to punch a tag, I could go over there and kill a doe. That's no problem. But I don't need to focus any of my deer harvest over on that far east, let's just say, border of that property, because they're shooting a skewed amount of antlerless deer of the population on that side of the farm. Whereas the central, western, whatever other region you want to look at, I could take does from, and I do. But that eastern side, I usually don't. And as a whole, You could go shoot a doe if you set your property up. You could almost go shoot a doe any night. If you needed to put a deer in the freezer, you should have your property almost set up where you could go sit a stand and kill a deer almost any night. As a rule, in our area where we have a good deer density, where people start falling short is, Keith says, over harvesting too many deer in a 100-acre block or whatever without communications and etc. You have to have that understanding that that resource has to have some replenishing to it. Otherwise, it won't last.
Right.
It's not like it's automatically going to make 10 deer the next year.
Right.
If you don't have 6-8 does, it's not going to make 10 more deer next year. That's not how it's not how reproduction works with animals.
Right.
So, but yeah, I think talking to your neighbors, kind of understanding what they're doing, and again, I don't necessarily care what you shoot or what you don't shoot. Just tell me, okay, we shot probably 5 or 6 does this summer. Okay, so that's 5 does. That's 2 to 3 fawns. We'll just say that's 8 deer on that whole side of our farm. I don't need to kill any does over there in fear of dropping that population too low below that. Let's call it 40% or above harvest rate for that section of the property where it's going to drop population. If I'm going to keep it stable, we'll just leave it stable and they can kill 6 deer a year every year and it doesn't matter. I don't have to kill one over there. Versus going into a spot and saying like at my grandmother's where I could probably go kill a doe any night I want and it wouldn't make any difference because the population depth's so crazy over there that I can't get a neighbor to shoot a doe. It's all situational.
Right. Other side of the spectrum.
Other side of the spectrum. It's Nate knows and Keith's been over there somewhat too. It's 2-3 miles as a crow flies. It ain't much different. For lengths wise, but it's completely opposite ends of the spectrum where you don't get hardly any doe harvest versus you get nuisance harvest and maybe somewhat over harvest in pockets. Again, it's fine. It'll bounce back. Deer will move, but you have to think about that. And that's where I really like that 4 or more, 5 or more, you can take a doe out of it. Because that puts it in really simple terms for folks is if you have 5 does, you take 1 doe, you are not going to decrease or increase the population. You're going to somewhat keep it stable. You can take a doe out of a group of 4 or 5 and not affect the population as a whole.
And I guess to advocate what you're saying there with that 5 doe rule on your farm is that there's also controversy with people thinking that, okay, I shoot this doe and it's got 2 fawns with it. Are those fawns going to make it?
Yeah,
well,
absolutely.
If they're in that group of 5 deer, they're still going to hang with that group even if you do take the mom.
So they're going to make it.
There's definitely a higher chance that those fawns or yearlings are going to have a better chance of survival because they're in a herd. They're in a group of deer.
Yeah.
You take one of them out of it, whether it's the mother or whatever, there's just a little higher percentage rate of their survival with that instead of 2 yearlings and you take the mom and you just leave the 2 yearlings. I think their chances of survival are probably a little less comparing the 2 situations.
Yeah. That's
also depends on time of year.
It's funny you bring that up because I was sitting in the stand on Monday and I said to myself, last time I sat in this stand this early, I had a mature doe come up with 2 yearlings and I made the decision. Am I going to take this doe or not? And I ultimately made the decision to take the shot, but I was like, would I do that again? And it was to go to that point, are they going to make it? And in that area where I was, where there weren't a lot of mature does, if I were to make that decision again, I probably would have said no. Because there wasn't a big mature doe population in that area. But then you go 6 miles to the east where my parents' property is, where there's 6 to 8 mature does and those same 2 fawns, it's a completely different ballgame.
Yeah.
Where I would have no problem taking that mature doe.
And I would definitely say if anybody's ever been there, which I pray you never have to be, it can tug on your heartstrings if you shoot a mature doe that has fawns. There's a lost aspect to it. There's other things that tie into that. But the one thing I will say, looking at the research and the biology of a deer, is an animal's will to survive will far surpass any kind of emotional or personification you project onto that deer.
Yeah.
Once they are 50 to 60 pounds live weight, they will survive on their own minus high predation rates.
Right.
They will survive. It's not like a bunch of people say, oh, knock the milk off the lip or whatever you want to call it.
Wow.
They're strong animals.
You get the ball busters.
Yeah, you get the ball busters. There's that will to survive, though, or whatever, where once they're 50, 60 pounds live weight, they will survive as a whole. So, again, do you need to take that doe with 2 fawns? Not necessarily. Like you said, 6 miles down the road, you have another hunting opportunity. You can maybe take a doe there. But if that's the only place you have to hunt, and maybe the only deer you've seen in, you said 4 or 5 sits or whatever, that might be a great deer to take is a mature doe in that situation. It's all situational.
And I think it depends. I think it depends too. Is like I was talking to Nate earlier. Your objective, right? So if your objective is to provide meat for yourself and your family, or your objective is to get a nice mount on the wall, those are drastically different objectives. To where if you do need meat in the freezer, you may
slightly different hunting styles.
It can be,
and that
100%,
would drastically
100%.
affect your decision in that situation, right? So I will never look down upon somebody that takes that doe.
No.
If they need that meat in the freezer for themselves or the family, but I also have fully respect for the person that passes it up for the objective of conservation, of keeping that population where they think it needs to be, or for whatever. So I think it's completely subjective of the situation, the property, and what you have as a whole. Like for me, this year, my goal is to harvest mature does. I'm going to leave the big bucks for you guys to kill. I said that today.
Well, we appreciate that.
Well, and it's because my objective is different. That's all there is to it. I want
at this point in your hunting career or hunting life. I mean, when you're pretty green.
Very green.
You're very green. You're only like really a year into it, maybe 2.
Yeah.
And your mindset as you grow as a hunter is going to evolve.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's like anything you get involved in. You're going to want to take the next step. You're going to want to, keep working yourself up to, eventually, you're probably going to get to a point where it sounds like you have pretty good population of does around. Like going out and killing a doe, you're just going to be, I can just do it. Like,
yeah.
But you want that challenge. You're going to miss that challenge. You're going to be like, well, what's the next step? All right, I want to try and harvest a mature buck. And then your hunting strategy and your hunting style and everything is just going to change a little bit. And your mindset's going to focus a little more in different directions as you grow as a hunter. At least that's what happened to me throughout my life.
Yeah.
Because I used to value success as just going out there and being able to harvest an animal.
And that's where I am. That's where I'm at right now, honestly.
And as years go on, I feel like maybe you won't, but I feel like it is with most people. You're going to just keep wanting to
challenge
take that
yourself.
next challenge. Because once the challenge is gone, I mean, for me, it's not as fun.
Right.
I respect
What's the strategy? You're going in to try and figure out. I mean, you can just go out there and sit in a corner of a field and I got my rifle. I can shoot 200 yards. And all right, I got a 200-yard radius. Wait for them to walk out.
Right.
Yeah.
There's not much.
They're going to come out.
It can be, yeah.
It depends on situational or whatever.
I think for me, personally, like we spoke about this a little bit, it's confidence. Confidence being able to execute a few things. The good woodsmanship, to be able to just get in and out and not have a large footprint, and with scent, with everything that goes with good sportsmanship, good woodsmanship, but also executing good ethical shots and having that confidence. So when that big mature buck does come up, that I know I can make that shot. For me, I'm not there. I'm not.
It always does take time, and no matter what, I mean, whether you're brand new to it, experienced hunter, you get into that situation, dude, and just sometimes it feels like the wheels are just coming off.
And you gotta center yourself.
Absolutely. And when it stops having the wheels come off at some point, you gotta take maybe a step back and go, okay, where am I at? You know, when the wheels stop coming off, at some point of the process, maybe depends on the person. I've had people come off before the shot. I've had people go completely crazy after the shot. That's typically me, where I can't stand up. I can't physically be in a tree. I have to climb down. Otherwise, I will fall out of a tree.
Thank God you have a harness on.
Yeah, they gotta have a harness on. Absolutely. So, and it depends on the individual with that too. But when that kind of experience stops and it turns into, I'm reading a really good book right now called Time to Table, where they're talking about these guys going out and shooting maybe 6 deer a day to feed this expedition back in the settler times when they're moving west. They have to kill 6 to 8 deer a day to feed the company or whatever as they're moving west. And I'm just like, at that point, you're just killing. You're not hunting. You're not a sportsman.
That's also like a survival thing.
Absolutely. Right. So, when it gets to that point where it's just all you're doing is out there pulling a trigger, it's just a work. It's a job.
I mean, at this point in time, hunting really isn't a necessity. There's a very small 100%. Percentage where hunting is a necessity. I mean, if you're the average Joe, you can go down to all these Wegmans, Costco, whatever. You go buy some chicken
for much less than you spend on tags and your hunting shit every year.
Well, it's not even.
It comes from a survival point.
I think about that too. It's like, so I don't butcher my own deer, so I pay $100 a pop, right? So if I want to have a deer process, it's $100 plus the camo, plus the ammo, plus the firearm or bow, whatever you choose.
It's just
to take
a hobby now.
Yeah, it's a hobby.
It is.
It is.
It's a good life skill, but it's still a hobby.
For sure. But what I like about it, in my thing, is, so I love deep venison. I've told you this. I freaking love deep venison. It's just, I really do. I really enjoy it.
Stand time is so much cheaper than therapy.
Well, it is. That's true.
Well,
but
depends on how much you spent.
That's true.
But also, too, it's what I really like about it, and call it what you will, is I know where that meat came from.
That's true.
So, I go harvest an animal on my parents' farm. I know that it came from that farm. It's
the nostalgia.
It's from our land. It's natural. It doesn't have whatever you want to call into it, and there's kind of a pride in that too.
Yeah, absolutely.
To take an animal off that land, and I also just like the idea of nature's meat. It's not coming off a farm. I know exactly what went into that deer, where it's coming from, and that's kind of a cool thing to be able to say, like, hey, all the meat I'm eating this year is off our farm.
Yeah.
And I think there is value to that for myself anyways.
Right.
It's a kind of a value you can't just put a dollar amount on it.
No.
Kind of brings you back to, what's the word I'm looking for? Not your roots, but your just human, like just the whole hunting idea. Like you're going
human nature.
You're going back to bringing
going on Neanderthal on me.
Just kind of like simplifying.
Right.
I don't know. I feel like it's like in you, like as a person, it's almost like an instinct, instinctive thing. That just going out there and being able to do that, it kind of
takes you back.
Yeah.
And there's pride in it too, being able to accomplish that, whether it's a big buck or a doe, whatever it might be. When I take a deer from our farm, whether it's a buck or a doe, like I'm ecstatic, right? I'm absolutely ecstatic, and I get pride in my sister that runs our horse farm. When I harvest a deer for Christmas, I give her meat, and I call it Little Bear meat because it's Little Bear Acres, and I'm like, this is all natural Little Bear Acres venison.
Yeah.
Homegrown.
Yeah.
And
that's
that's just a
cool
cool thing to
Yeah.
be able to do as a person in our area, just to have pride in that of what you're doing, and doesn't matter really what it is, and it doesn't even have to be a deer, right? Whatever you're going to harvest off that land, being able to know where it came from and be able to share that and use it. That's a cool part of it.
Yep,
So,
for sure.
Closing in on the 9 o'clock mark, so I guess
Probably wrap it up.
Closing remarks. I think this weekend we got another little, I guess, bump front, I guess, coming in.
Gonna rain all weekend or what?
It looks like spotty. It's what do they call it?
I think
Spot showers.
I think it's gonna be a pretty good weekend to get out, especially with this week of cooler temperatures.
Yeah.
I think things are gonna start moving a little bit. I think you're gonna see a little more deer movement this weekend.
So you think you're gonna focus morning or afternoon this
Afternoon.
weekend? Afternoon.
Yeah, I think afternoon still. Mornings, again, if you only have weekends, again, I'm not saying push into your best spots. I'm saying, still pick the right spot, the right wind. Don't push anything. If you're going to have a time to push it from like a month from now, where, the rut might be a little bit more, where you can push that envelope a little bit or whatever.
Don't burn yourself out.
Don't burn your best spot.
I mean, if you're don't go in there and be hunting mornings and evenings right now and just burning yourself out physically, and wearing yourself out, putting that time in the stand, and things really aren't really moving the greatest yet. Save your energy, get out there, knock the rust off.
Make sure you got your stuff.
Get everything. And I'm not saying there's not a chance you're gonna kill.
Yeah, because we know a lot of folks
what you're
that have
targeting
killed.
or whatever. But I mean, there's always a chance. But yeah, I think your chances are gonna increase substantially here in the next 2 weeks of getting a mature buck in front of you, and that is when you want to start. You get that to that last week of October, then start pounding the hours in the stand.
Yeah.
Until gun season, because those last 3 weeks of bow are, you wear yourself out then.
Yeah, right.
Don't burn yourself out and mentally get yourself all messed up because you got these deer on camera and you're not seeing them.
Yeah.
The first couple weeks of October.
You got to have some patience. It's more like we say marathon versus sprint. Again, if you want to go out, knock the rust off, kill a doe, put yourself in a situation, make sure your stuff's right, harvest a doe, whatever. There's plenty of time for that right now.
Or shoot the big buck if he's there.
Or shoot the big buck if he's there. I'm not saying let the big buck walk.
Yeah, let the big buck walk until the second or the first week of November.
Yeah,
and then
go after him.
No, don't do that.
No.
But,
let patience prevail.
Yeah, you can be patient. I'm not saying be hesitant. I'm just saying be patient. If the spot's right, if the situation's right, if you have an oak tree or an apple tree or whatever right now that's dropping mast out the wazoo, it's a good chance if that's the only mast or whatever in town, you might have a good buck coming into it.
Focus on food, keep on the edges for the next week or so, and then get to that last week of October and dive in and hit it hard.
Yep. Then you can start hitting those funnels, the pinches, all that stuff.
Focus
hard on food.
Getting deeper in that timber,
and
focusing on that.
But
either way, if you get out there, good luck.
Good luck, everybody. Be safe.
Thanks for tuning in.
Shoot straight. We appreciate you checking this out. Working on getting on to multiple podcast platforms, whether it be Spotify, Apple, iHeartRadio, etc. Trying to figure out the logistics of that, getting on a streaming service. going forward with that. So bear with us on this. Hopefully, we keep bringing you stuff on the Facebook and YouTube every week.
Yep.
We won't stop doing the live no matter what we do. But want to thank all you guys for hanging out with us. Thank you, Keith, for stopping by tonight.
Yeah, thanks.
Nate, like always, thank you, sir.
Yep.
We'll keep these coming every week now that we're in season. And catch you down here next time at the bar or the deer shed or wherever we're at with Hunter Proof Whitetails.
Hopefully one of these episodes, we can do one live with a deer hanging.
We've
That'd be
done it
nice.
before.
I did it before.
We've done it before. We'll do it again.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Thank you. We'll catch y'all next time.
Good luck. Shoot straight.
Thanks.
See ya.